Martin Ødegaard used to be the one holding Arsenal together. Now he's watching from the sidelines again. The captain, the calm, the man who made chaos look effortless. But his body keeps saying no. A knock becomes a strain becomes another few weeks out. And this time, something's different. Arsenal are coping, winning without their captain. For the first time, Odegaard isn't the heartbeat, he's the echo. This isn't about form or tactics anymore, it's about the quiet fear every player has. What happens when the team you built learns to survive without you? This is Odegaard versus his body, the injury war no one sees. Before the captain, before Arsenal, there was a 15-year-old kid in Drammen, Norway, playing men's football like it was a playground. Martin Ødegaard's debut for Strømgodset came in April 2014, and it wasn't just early, it was absurdly early. The youngest player and scorer in Tippeligaen history. At 16, in January 2015, Real Madrid called. Imagine that, walking into a dressing room with Ronaldo, Bale, Modric, while still too young to drive yourself to training. The world saw a prodigy. What they didn't see was a boy thrown into the deep end of a man's sport, and a body not yet ready for the grind. In those early Madrid years, he mostly played for Castilla, trained occasionally with the first team. He'd travel with the seniors midweek, then play in the Segunda on weekends. It was relentless, almost reckless. At 17, fatigue set in for the first time. Not injury, just a heaviness, the kind that lingers when your body's growing and your schedule doesn't care. So, Madrid loaned him out. Heerenveen, Vitesse, then Real Sociedad. At Vitesse, he finally breathed in 2018-19, double digits in goals and assists, playing every weekend without the white noise of Madrid. In July 2019, he joined Real Sociedad on loan, and it finally felt real. A loan that didn't feel like hiding, but like belonging. He bossed midfields at Anoeta, and by September 2019, he was named La Liga Player of the Month, not for one clip, but for control. Then, in February 2020, he walked into the Bernabeu in the Copa del Rey and scored against his parent club. Calm finish, no celebration, just a nod. The hype faded, the football didn't. Each move felt like a step back, but it built the player Arsenal would one day build around. Technique refined, confidence rebuilt, body adapted. For a moment, it seemed like the war was over. It hadn't even started. When Odegaard arrived at Arsenal in early 2021, it didn't feel like a headline transfer. It felt like a second chance. A 6-month loan from Madrid. Low risk, low noise, but Mikel Arteta saw something the rest of Europe had forgotten: composure. Within weeks, he was dictating Arsenal's tempo. That curling strike against Tottenham in March 2021 wasn't just a goal, it was a statement. The kid labelled too soft had just scored in a North London derby. He followed it with a threaded pass away at West Ham that split their backline like a zipper. The first time Arsenal fans saw him speed up a game without running. Arsenal made it permanent that summer. The 2021-22 season was the year that trust became habit. He started 40-plus matches across competitions and became the third-man run they rehearsed all week. Set, bounce, arrive. The partnership with Bukayo Saka began to hum, triangles forming almost on instinct down that right channel. One example that stands out came in March 2022, away at Watford. He scored the opener in a 3-2 win and ran the game, the calm heartbeat in a frantic team still learning control. Arsenal fell just short of the top 4, but something had shifted. The football finally looked like Arteta's blueprint, and Ødegaard was holding the pen. By the summer of 2022, Arteta handed him the armband. Then, 2022-23 turned belief into noise. The low drive at Spurs from 25 yards, the 2 first-time finishes against Chelsea at the Emirates, and that snapshot at Newcastle that silenced St James Park. Not highlight hunting, pattern making. Arsenal learned to play his rhythm. The transformation was complete, from a player searching for belonging to the captain of a club trying to find itself. And for a while, it was perfect. In the 2022-23 title race, Ødegaard produced his best football yet. 15 goals, 7 assists, and the composure of a veteran 10 years older. But the warning signs were already there. Late in games, he'd slow, a hand to the hip, a stretch of the thigh, small things that told big truths. Arteta called it intensity, Ødegaard called it standards, his body called it enough. Nobody listened, because when the captain keeps playing, everyone else keeps believing. Stories like Ødegaard's don't always get told. If you want more of them, subscribing helps the channel reach more people who love football for its human side. Now, back to the story. The 2023-24 season was supposed to be the next step, the year Arsenal finally turned promise into power. For Ødegaard, it began the same way as always, calm, composed, dictating everything. He scored in the 4-0 win over Bournemouth in late September, captained that fierce 1-0 victory over Manchester City in early October, and looked untouchable. Then the knocks began. Fatigue, a hip issue, then the word everyone hates, precaution. He missed the Champions League trip to Sevilla on October 24th under concussion protocol after a training ground knock. Then Newcastle away in early November with a hip problem that refused to settle. Norway called him up in November. He lasted one training session. Back in London, he tried to train through the dull ache. Gym, activation, tape, repeat. Club briefings called it tightness, and he kept insisting he'd be fine by the weekend. He wasn't. By mid-December, he returned to the 11, the timing back. Late runs, disguised passes, the patterns that felt like old times. But the rhythm wouldn't stay. Arsenal pushed on without him. Declan Rice ran the midfield, and the control didn't vanish when Ødegaard wasn't there, but the sharpness did. By February 2024, he was gone again. A training knock, another spell on the sidelines. He returned in March for the run-in, quieter, cautious, never quite in full flow. The spark was still there in moments, but the sharpness that wants to find him wasn't. He looked steady, but not decisive, present, but never dominant. Arsenal finished second again, pushing City to the final weeks. But for Ødegaard, it was different this time. He'd been there, but not really there. A captain playing catch-up with his own body. And deep down, he knew this wasn't a one-off. It was the start of a pattern. Ødegaard came into the 2024-25 season promising a reset, a full pre-season, no setbacks, finally pain-free. For the first few weeks, it looked like the old rhythm had returned. The sharp turns, the half spaces, the control. He scored in the 2-0 opening win over Wolves in August, was at his usual creative best away at Everton in early September, and the Emirates looked whole again. Then late September arrived, and so did the first flare-up, a twisted ankle in training that ruled him out for nearly 2 months. When he finally returned in late November, it wasn't quite the same. Warm-ups where he hit every pass clean, but still felt a step short. By December, Arteta was scripting games without him from minute 60, planned subs to protect the captain from his own standards. He was playing some weeks, sitting out others, as Arteta managed his minutes. It wasn't punishment, it was protection, but for Ødegaard it felt like a demotion. He'd watched from the bench as Arsenal kept winning enough to stay in the race. Trossard's movement, Rice's control. The team was evolving, and he could feel it, painfully. He returned in late January, desperate to remind everyone, created chances, pressed high, tried to force the rhythm back, like a man fighting to feel himself again. But the body didn't agree. Another knock, another minor setback. Arsenal stayed in the title race deep into May, finishing second again, this time without leaning entirely on their captain's magic. And that's when the fear started to feel real. The game was moving on, and Ødegaard was struggling to keep up. By August 2025, the pattern was familiar. Ødegaard missed most of preseason, returned briefly, and then the old tightness crept back in. A week of full sessions became 3 days, a full match became 40 minutes. Precaution turned into another week out. By late August, he started in the 5-0 win over Leeds, but came off clutching his shoulder. The the same one that had troubled him months earlier. Arsenal called it a minor issue. 2 weeks later, he tried again, this time in the 3-0 win over Nottingham Forest, only to aggravate the same shoulder in a first-half collision during training that week. By September, he was back to cameos, a few late appearances, a start he couldn't finish, then more time on the bike while the rest of the squad trained. Arsenal kept moving, not cruising, moving. Declan Rice held the structure. When fit, Noni Madueke stretched games on the right. Victor Gyökeres gave them presence up front and a reason to go long when the press broke. The patterns didn't look the same without Odegaard, but they didn't collapse either. And that might be the most painful part. He's returned twice already this autumn, once in the North London derby at the Emirates, 45 controlled minutes, no risks, and again away in Europe, in a gritty draw with Olympiacos, where he slipped one disguised reverse pass and then signalled to the bench, enough for tonight. Each time the touch was still there, the disguised pass into the half space, the little shoulder feint to buy a yard. Each time the rhythm disappeared quicker than it used to. Minutes managed, loads adjusted, another scan, another we'll reassess after the break. From the stands, he watched wins built on control rather than choreography. Fewer flourishes, more decisions. Arsenal weren't waiting for the captain to draw the map anymore. They were learning to navigate without him. He kept speaking like a leader. Short answers, steady eyes, no self-pity. But there's a difference between leading a team and orbiting one. This, more than the pain, is the injury he cannot treat. The slow separation between the player who once set the tempo and the team that can now keep time on its own. Football is cruel that way. You spend years trying to build something bigger than yourself, and when it finally stands on its own, you realize it doesn't need you anymore. For Ødegaard, that's both heartbreak and legacy. Every triangle Arsenal play, every patient build-up, every press that feels choreographed, it still carries his fingerprint. His control didn't just organize games, it organized people. He taught a young team how to slow the noise, how to trust the rhythm. That doesn't vanish when you're out injured. It lingers, in habits, in standards, in expectation. He still leads from the sidelines. The voice is calm, measured, advice between drills, encouragement in huddles. But he knows football doesn't pause for anyone. Every recovery window brings a new rumour, a young midfielder linked, another option considered. That's the price of progress in a club that now believes it belongs at the top. And maybe that's the real test of his legacy, not whether Arsenal win with him, but whether they can keep playing like him. Because, in a way, they already are. If there's a way back, it won't be a montage, it'll be boring work. Load, rest, repeat, and then the quiet moment a body finally says yes. Ødegaard's story isn't over. His body might be slowing down, but the game he shaped is still speaking his language. The passes, the patience, the silence before the spark, they all started with him. The conductor may have stepped off stage, but the music still sounds like Ødegaard. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, it really helps the channel grow. And if you love deep football stories like this one, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter.